We're a few weeks into the spring anime season, and with it comes new adaptations, returning favorites, and the ever-present Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood fans dedicating all their time and energy into review bombing any show that comes close to or surpassing it as the #1 show on MyAnimeList. This season in particular has seen a lot of great shows released across multiple demographics, with shojo in particular seeing an unusually large amount of series being adapted, including Loving Yamada, Level 999, Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts, the returning Tokyo Mew Mew New, and the female demographic manhwa Why Ray Liana Ended Up at the Duke's Mansion, all being released this season. Add that to Sugar Apple Fairy Tale and the Josei series Ice Guy and His Cool Female Colleague, and Tsundere Villainous Lisolette all getting adaptations last season, and it's actually been a great time to be a shoujosei fan. Though not perfect, all of these shows have been given time, effort, and care, with Sugar Apple Fairy Tale even getting a second season announced for later this year. As much as I love Demon Slayer, Hell's Paradise, and Heavenly Delusion, it's great to see the oft-forgotten and neglected female demographics get a chance to shine after many years of scraps. All that being said, there's one show that has caught a lot of people's attention this season, which has resulted in an ever-growing cycle of arguments, think pieces, Twitter threads, and TikToks that rear their ugly head every couple of months. That show, Skip and Loafer. Now, don't get me wrong or start putting words in my mouth. I absolutely adore this series, and I have ever since I read the first volume a year and a half ago. It's an adorable and endearing slice of life, featuring lovable characters, a great sense of humor, and a quirky, down-to-earth sensibility that makes it as endlessly readable as it is now watchable. But much like Horimiya and Romantic Killer before it, Skip and Loafer is often mistaken for a shojo when it is in fact not a shojo. In fact, Skip and Loafer is a seinen published in the same magazine as Vinland Saga and Blue Period. Now, this video isn't going to be another dissection of misattributed series like my takedown of Romantic Killer or my deep dive into the history of demographics. Both those videos exist already, and the points in both of those videos still stand here. I'd be repeating myself for 25 minutes while speaking negatively about one of my favorite series that is currently ongoing, and I'm not that devoid of ideas yet. Instead, I want to take a look into the slice of life genre itself, particularly the Iyashikei subgenre that series like Skip and Loafer, Bocchi the Rock, Laid Back Camp, and others belong to, that has led to this confusion as to why the dark, realistic, gory, and violent seinen demographic, at least according to Western audiences, has this fun, lighthearted, and cutesy side to it. It may not seem that important or deep on the surface, but if you start to do some digging, the results are as heartbreaking as they are fascinating. When digging into the historical side of the slice of life genre, things are often a bit murky given how broad and open for interpretation the genre is at its core. What's widely recognized is its inspiration, which were the Shimogeki films of the mid-20s that began after the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923. These realist-style films focused on the everyday life of the average Japanese citizen and were spearheaded by the Shochiku Film Studio and directors Yasujiro Shimazu, Yasujiro Ozu, and Mikio Noruze. They varied wildly in topic and levels of seriousness, but the main core was always about establishing the idea that the film could be talking about you or me at any given time. These were quite popular for a number of years in between the more grandiose features, and paired with magazines aimed at young adults, both traditional and later on in manga form, they paved the way for the building blocks of what would eventually become known as the slice of life genre. Nowhere was this better represented than Saze-san, a comic strip that began in the late 40s and ran until the mid-70s, publishing a total of 6,477 comic strips, which were later collected into 68 volumes, 15 of which were published bilingually in both Japanese and English. Despite its more antiquated views of traditional Japanese society as viewed through a modern lens, at the time it was quite liberal and progressive, and its theme of family and the joy that the little things in life can bring you really struck a nerve with a lot of people, selling over 86 million copies over its lifetime. In October of 1969, an anime adaptation began, which is still running to this day, holding the Guinness World Record for the longest-running animated television show in history, as well as being the 24th longest-running overall, with over 7,000 episodes over 54 years. Each Sunday, from 6:30 to 7, 3 new episodes will air, and it's become such a cultural milestone that a syndrome was even named after it, which would cause people to become depressed and despondent and sad after the new episodes had aired, because that signaled the end of the weekend. I'll dig a bit more into Sazen-san at a later time while discussing how much anime and manga the average Japanese person really consumes, but Sazen-san is a national treasure that everyone from the youngest children to the most elderly folk have heard of. With the success of Sazen-san came more series that followed a similar formula of exploring the everyday life of the average person, though often told with a bit of a twist. The first and most noticeable of these was Urusei Yatsura, which aired 194 episodes from 1981 until 1986. In that series, an alien race known as the Oni arrive on planet Earth, and instead of invading it, give Earth a chance to defend themselves by taking part in a game of tag. Ataru Moriboshi, a deeply unlucky individual in every sense of the word, is picked as humanity's representative, while Lum, the daughter of the leader of the Oni, is picked as theirs. Moriboshi wins, but thanks to a misunderstanding when he tries to propose to his real girlfriend, Lum believes it was aimed at her and accepts on live television. From there, hijinks and shenanigans ensue as we follow the everyday life of Moriboshi as he tries to balance his actual relationship with his fake relationship and not personally crumble in the process. Other shows came and went, but the 1-2 punch of Sazen-san and Urusei Yatsura, plus the rise of Studio Ghibli with releases like Only Yesterday, Whisper of the Heart, and My Neighbors the Yamada throughout the 90s, helped solidify the slice of life genre as its own entity away from the more action-heavy series you'd find elsewhere. Where the Iyashikei subgenre comes into play, however, is rooted in building up from tragedy. In January of 1995, a magnitude 7.3 earthquake registered in the southern part of the Hyogo Prefecture, devastating and destroying large parts of Kobe, Awaji, Takazuka, and parts of the Osaka Prefecture. Besides the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923, the Great Hanshin earthquake, as it would become later known as, was one of the most deadly events in 20th century Japan, doing millions of dollars in damage, killing 6,434 people, and injuring even more. Millions of volunteers came together to help build from the rubble, but in March of that same year, the Shinrikyo Doomsday Cult released sarin gas on 3 separate lines of the Tokyo Metro during rush hour, killing 14, seriously injuring around 1,000 people, and causing minor injuries to another 4,000, for a total of 5,500 injuries in all. It is widely regarded as the deadliest terrorist incident in Japanese history. These back-to-back tragedies, mixed with economic strife, Toxic work culture and emotional distress led to the healing boom of the mid-90s, in which companies and vendors would offer Iyashikei, or healing products, that promised to relieve your stress and relax your mind. This was everything from music, movies, television, to various types of therapeutic modalities, to even pornography. Yes, really. Whether they were actually effective or not didn't really matter. They were something different than the norm and offered a sense of personal isolation and a break from the everyday hustle and bustle of Japanese life. It was a way to escape, to regulate your mood and find your own inner peace. It was from this that the term ambient literature was coined by Paul Roquet, whose article in the Journal of Japanese Studies in 2009 became a large jumping-off point for this entire video. But before we get deeper into that, we first need to work our way back to the present. About 4 years into the healing boom of 1995, around 1999, a series was released that gained a lot of traction for Japanese audiences. That series? Azumanga Daioh. Building off the Iyashikei products and ambient literature of the time, the idea of the series was to show a group of friends interacting with each other in their daily lives over the course of 3 years. Focusing on child prodigy Chiho Mihama trying to fit in after skipping 5 grades, the series became beloved for its silly, lighthearted antics, quirky sense of humor, low stakes, and easygoing pace, even being voted one of the top 25 manga in 2006. Due to its popularity, an anime was released in 2002 that became just as popular as its manga counterpart, leading to Japanese audiences wanting more shows that fit into this style. Over the rest of the early 2000s, more and more of these shows were released, especially as a rising interest in moe culture started to take hold. Shows like Lucky Star, Hidamari Sketch, and K-On! Were all wildly popular, and through it came 2 more terms that get thrown around a lot in the slice of life sphere: Nichijou-kei and cute girls doing cute things. Both are fairly interchangeable terms that vary depending on your geographic location, but the idea was to carve out their own niche within the slice of life umbrella, as at the time most shows that weren't distinctly battle shonen had some form of slice of life qualities to them, whether purposeful or not. Even within the Iyashikei and Nichijou-kei, the distinction was that while Iyashikei would actively try to heal, soothe, and regulate your feelings, Nichijou-kei was more of an idealistic escape, where you could turn your brain off and just enjoy the fun sights and sounds in front of you. One appealed to an adult audience deep in the toxic work culture and economic distress that had plagued Japan for decades, and the other could appeal to a more teenage audience who wanted to see people like them on the screen just messing around and having fun. As time went on, however, and as anime continued to grow into the billion-dollar industry it is today, those once distinct lines began to blur until the line itself was no longer visible. To explain how this line ultimately dissolved into where we are now, this is where ambient literature and its definition become important. Without going over Roque's entire thesis with a fine-tooth comb, one example that is brought up is the act of sitting in a chair. What does this chair feel like? What does it look like? How does it feel sitting in the chair? And what are the sights and sounds surrounding it? How does your body feel? How does the floor feel? The idea of ambient literature is to explain the most mundane and unimportant things as if they were central to the plot, without actually holding any narrative weight. Essentially, it was to lull you into a sense of security and peace. That chair might not mean anything, but having it described to you in great detail in a calm and soothing tone is meant to put you at ease. When you apply that to an anime, which utilizes sights and sounds, it becomes even more clear. Simple compositions with a larger focus on backgrounds and softer colors, minimalistic sound design paired with calming and relaxing music, and a deliberate pacing that isn't really interested in rushing you towards the end creates a combination that has kept the anime world interested for over 2 decades. But as time has gone on and new series have been released, the desire to reach the largest possible audience has meant that genres and subgenres have blended together in hopes it will reach a large crowd. Not only that, but with comfort shows becoming a more prevalent necessity in popular culture and mental health studies, a show that may not have been billed as an Iyashikei, rather a Nichijou-kei, will have those same types of healing components, but on a more personal level. The idea has always been a personal connection. That's at the heart of otaku culture as a whole. You get attached to the world, the characters, the story, and want to envelop yourself in that. You want to dress up as the character, you want to get figures representing it, you want everything to do with this world or those characters. Why somebody gets a cold, is late to school, or is having trouble finding their favorite hair clip might not be the most important thing to the plot, but because it's characters you love, it becomes something that matters to you, because you've created a bond with the character through its story. That's a slice of life at its heart and soul. Why a door exists in the middle of nowhere that takes you to a restaurant in Japan might not make any logical sense, and it may never really be truly explained, but you care because you like the people involved. Even if the show includes action, suspense, or drama, if at the end of the episode things feel like they're back to normal or some variation of the status quo, then it's done its job properly. The question still remains, though, why are these targeted towards adult males in seinen magazines? The reason is sad but simple. Like I mentioned earlier and have mentioned throughout this video, the work culture in Japan is incredibly toxic and volatile. People often feel isolated and alone as they trudge through their everyday lives. They yearn for the period in their lives where they had more freedom, more friends, and ultimately more time. While Western audiences often view things in a binary of feminine or masculine media, in Japan there tends to be a wider understanding as long as it doesn't go too far one way or the other. That's why you'll see these kinds of series actively try to blend shonen characterizations and tonal consistency with shoujo's focus on emotional-based storytelling in a means to create a sort of comfortable familiarity. The cynical part of me realizes that they're essentially parroting and wholesale copying some shoujo tropes and elements in a means to appeal to the widest possible audience, but still, I can recognize the importance of what they're trying to do, because in making these kinds of series, they inadvertently or purposefully create their own unique flavor in and of themselves. Whereas shoujo will often focus deeply on a few select characters and really flesh out their emotional and mental state, these slice-of-life series often take a more broad approach, with a larger cast attempting to give each character some sort of realistic weight to them. That's why oftentimes the story is the characters and not any sort of large overarching plot. There might be a central conceit to draw in the viewer, be it a goal to achieve, a character to confess to, or a desired mental state, but the big picture is often purposefully overshadowed by the little acts within to keep you focused on who you see, not what's going on. Whether in school, a small town, or even a workplace environment, these series will often be treated, on a magazine level at least, like a breather between the darker and more violent works you see in most seinen magazines. That's why you can see a chapter of Vinland Saga followed by a Skip and Loafer. It's meant to take you down after you've been brought up, to give you a little extra variety, to put you at ease after something dark or dramatic. In fact, it's such a known commodity and an old trick that in recent years, some magazine publishers have opened up their own slice-of-life focused seinen magazines for those that only want that kind of storytelling and none of the alternatives. It might seem like, as we get older, that all we want is the dark and gritty reality, but as someone who watches a lot of Bob Ross and Great British Bake Off, sometimes you need the downtime because life can throw a lot of monkey wrenches at you. No matter how you look at it, and regardless of whether you enjoy it or not, slice of life has had an immense impact on the way media is consumed in Japan. From Saze-san welcoming families in for a rest before the new work week, to Urusei Yatsura, Azumanga Daioh, Nan Biori, and even, yes, Skip and Loafer, to help tired workers disengage from the stresses of daily life by giving them the mental and emotional reset that they oh so desperately need. It has had its distinct place among the pantheon of other genres, and in some ways is one of the most important genres of all. While it's fun to get excited at an amazing action sequence, grandiose set pieces, or to see two characters finally come together as one while we kick our feet uncontrollably, sometimes we need to take a step back, turn our brains off, and forget the world for 24 minutes. Things are tough for everyone, no matter who you are. And while yes, the presentation can sometimes be confusing for some audiences, especially those that refuse to educate themselves on basic demographics, that's not what matters in the end. Not everyone can afford therapy or have someone to talk to in dark times. What we can do, though, is grab a nice warm beverage, dim the lights, turn on the television, tablet, or computer, and put on one of these shows. Maybe it won't work for you, everyone has their own way of handling things, but if you envelop yourself in a quality slice of life, like a nice warm blanket, and really let go, you'd be surprised at how much that can improve your everyday life. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video. I don't have a really long outro this time, so if you liked the video, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and I am everywhere at Mac Loves Manga, and until then, I'll see you all next time, and be sure to keep on reading.